John Carpenter is an American filmmaker and composer whose career spans over half a century. He is known for his horror and action films, the most famous of which probably being the Halloween franchise. Those movies got kinda funky as time went on, but you know, it's the way of horror franchises, I can't hate on it. I'm a big fan of Carpenter's movies, my personal favourite films of his being The Thing, Christine, and They Live. Predictable, I know. My favourite non-scary movie by him is probably Starman. Maybe I'll review it at some point. During the late 80s and early 90s, there were a lot of vampire movies being released. I don't know, maybe it was appealing to the youth subcultures at the time. And one of those films to come out during the later part of the century was a film by John Carpenter. The 1998 film, Vampires. I'm pretty sure that I have seen this film before. I do recognise a lot of the scenes from it, but I don't have a super recollection of it overall, so it's basically like I haven't seen it. It was apparently based on the 1990 novel of the same name by John Siskel. I haven't read the book at the time of making this video, so I can't say how accurate Carpenter's film is to it, but if you guys think I should read it, I'll give it a go. According to the numbers, Carpenter's Vampires just about broke even, and the reviews in general aren't exactly glowing. But, is this actually just a film that didn't get the praise that it deserved at the time of its release? Let's find out. Without further ado, on with the review. After some familiar looking and appropriately coloured production logos, we get the opening credits over nice footage of a sunrise, something vampires will never get to see. Well, unless their name is Edward Cullen. The movie follows a vampire hunting crew, led by John Jack Crow, played by James Woods. They are blessed by a priest before raiding this old shack, and the contrast between the very formal clergyman and geared up vampire killers did make me laugh. During the raid, the team come across an old drained skeleton, along with several vampires, and we get our first look at one of their coolest weapons, a crossbow that fires arrows attached to a winch, which will then pull a vampire into the sunlight. It's a pretty imaginative take on how to achieve a vampire sunlight kill, and I really like the effect of the vampires bursting into flames rather than them just turning into dust immediately. It's also interesting how casual a couple of them are about doing this compared to some of their teammates, but I suppose that you would get desensitized to it after a while. The group leave, but Jack is anxious about the fact that they didn't find the nest's master. As their van leaves, a pair of hands rise from the ground in a zombie-like manner. I guess this is their guy, huh? The group stays at a motel that evening with some sex workers, and there's a shot of this edgy guy approaching the motel. If there's one thing you never want to see when you're in a vampire movie, it's a vaguely alternative looking person walking towards you. It basically means it's over for you. So, this is the head of the nest, Valak, played by Thomas Ian Griffith. He bites this one lady called Katrina, played by Cheryl Lee, aka Laura Palmer, that was being friendly with Jack and kills almost everyone. But I mean, Valak has quite the manicure. Is it just me, or do vampires always have nails and hair on point? But yeah, if you're in a vampire movie, stay away from Hot Topic. He also addresses Jack by name, which is, you know, creepy. Jack and his friend, Tony Montoya, played by Daniel Baldwin, are the only survivors, so these guys don't really seem to be too effective vampire hunters when they get caught off guard and can't plan anything. Then again, head vampires are always way older and more powerful than their underlings. Jack decides to take Katrina with them, as she will soon share a telepathic link with Valak, so they can use her to snitch on him.
After that, he's gonna start receiving his thoughts, seeing what he sees.
Exactly. Like a surveillance camera, so we can find him and shove a stake right up his ass.
Pretty good reasoning in my opinion, and having a psychic link to the vampire that bit you isn't something that's unheard of. Montoya steals a car from some guy that's just trying to refill his tank, and the two friends argue when Jack goes to bury the teammates and burn down the motel. It's wise that he makes sure that they don't turn, just in case. This is probably one of the smartest decisions that I've ever seen in a horror film. Montoya watches a news report about the burned remains being found while staying at another motel, and Jack meets with a cardinal named Albert, played by Maximilian Schell, and meets a priest called Adam Guiteau, played by Tim Guinea. Jack asks if Valak could be a vampire that they had always been anticipating the arrival of, I assume that being the king of the vampires. Although he gives Father Guiteau a concerned look, Cardinal Albert avoids the question and instead tells Jack that the entire squad of European vampire hunters were killed a few days before. A framed portrait of Valak was found at the scene.
Hey, Queen.
And for some reason, this was hilarious to me, like, he left his calling card.
But wait! There's more!
Apparently Valak was a priest who led a rebellion against the church, resulting in his execution. Although he was then reported to be seen at night and drinking the blood of the living. According to Bookworm Guiteau, this was the first recorded case of vampirism, so yeah, the Vampire King. Albert demands that Jack rebuild his team and take Father Guiteau with him, and Jack reluctantly goes along with it for fear of the vampire hunting operation's funding being cancelled. Meanwhile, Montoya explains everything that's happened to Katrina, which must suck for her. Guiteau starts nerding out to Jack about how he knows his backstory, that his family were killed by vampires, how the church took him in and raised him to be their best hunter, and how, although he didn't want to be forced onto Jack, he is looking forward to this kind of adventure. What can I say, the guy's a nerd. Jack doesn't take all of this too well, however.
Who set us up? Was it you? Oh! Who set us up? Who was it? Oh!
Despite Jack actually doing this because he suspects that the vampire hunting teams were set up, I don't think you're supposed to do this to priests. I'm sure that's a rule in the Bible somewhere. I'm pretty sure that this is a guaranteed ticket to hell, Jack.
Forget whatever you've seen in the movies. They don't turn into bats. Crosses don't work. Garlic? Wanna try garlic? You stand there with garlic around your neck. One of these buggers will binge.
La la la, I can't hear you. I can see how stuff like vampires not liking garlic can come across as silly to a lot of people, but there are actual traditions to vampire lore. If it works for what this movie is going for though, I can't really knock it. Jack then shows Guiteau a map suggesting that the vampires are looking for something that would allow them to walk in the sunlight.
Virus.
Nobody knows what it really is. Poison, Kool-Aid, whatever, it all does the same thing. Turns you into a vampire.
I'm pretty sure Stephanie Meyer called it vampire venom. Alright, I'll stop with the Twilight references, I'm sorry. Montoya lets Katrina know that her friends didn't survive the attack at the motel, and explains that if they kill Valak in time, she won't turn into a vampire. Katrina doesn't take all of this, nor her visions from Valak very well at all, and attempts to jump off the edge of the fire escape. When Montoya pulls her back inside, she bites him out of frustration, but Montoya hides this from Jack and Guiteau when they come to check on him and Katrina, although Jack does grow skeptical of his behaviour. The budding vampiress then has visions of Valak attacking a church's cleaning lady called Mrs. Fisher, and a well-read priest called Father Molina in San Miguel, but not before getting the priest to show him something on a map. That evening, Valak and several lesser master vampires rise from under the ground, and I mean, that's one effective way of making sure you don't get sunburned while you sleep. Jack corners Guiteau, revealing that he actually killed his father when he attacked Jack and his mother after being bitten by a vampire, and threatens the priest into disclosing the secret that he and the church have been trying to hide from Jack. The relic that Valak is looking for is called the Black Cross of Berzier, and just as I was hoping, they give us an actual reason for Valak turning into a vampire.
The accounts are confused, but they refer to an inverse exorcism. The body is destroyed, but the possessed soul remains. The exorcism transformed Valak into a creature whose body is dead, but lives on.
Vampire.
Makes sense, to be honest. I was expecting it to be some kind of Faustian bargain or something, but this also explains why the Catholic Church would be so closely involved with vampire hunting, perhaps to absolve some sort of responsibility. This revelation is intercut with Valak and his goons breaking into a monastery to steal the cross, and we also get a pretty cool fire stunt.
What the hell we gonna do now?
When the new team visit the raided monastery, Montoya becomes very defensive of Katrina, and this almost causes a fight between Jack and Montoya before Guiteau interrupts. He says that Valak probably wants the cross to complete the inverse exorcism and allow himself to walk in the sunlight, as Jack had presumed. The team, now much smaller than the one at the beginning of the film, get up and enter the nest, which is much bigger than the one at the beginning of the film, funnily enough. Although he makes a pretty slow start to killing the vampires, Guiteau volunteers as bait, which is pretty brave, I'll give him that. We get the return of that cool crossbow from earlier too. They do manage to kill several vampires, but the sun sets and Valak arrives with many more. Jack is kidnapped and Montoya speeds away with Katrina, who is finally completing her transformation, biting him and returning to Valak. Although I wish they did get a happy ending, I think that we all saw that coming, let's be real. Upon waking up, Jack is greeted by Cardinal Alba, who actually has made a sort of a Faustian bargain. He has grown scared of death in his old age, and Valak has promised to turn him into a vampire in return for his help. Because that's never gone wrong for anyone, right? Don't you know anything, Cardinal? Either way, Valak doesn't seem like that big of a fan of Jack's smart mouth.
Get me all tied up, huh?
What will silence you?
It turns out that Jack's blood is needed for the ritual, and he is to be crucified on a burning cross, with the climax of the ceremony coinciding with the dawn. So it was all a setup from the beginning? Talk about betrayal. Guiteau actually being in hiding and overhearing all of this naturally feels betrayed too, and arms himself for battle. Just as Alba goes to set the cross on fire, Guiteau shoots him down, and threatens to kill himself so that no one will be able to complete the ritual. As his transformation isn't yet complete, Montoya uses the crossbow to drag the cross away from the vampires, allowing Guiteau to cut Jack free as the sun rises once more. The vampires rush inside, and Jack sticks Valak with the end of the black cross. While the vampire is trying to remove it, Jack knocks down the roofing support, allowing the sunlight in completely, killing Valak. As Montoya was loyal to Jack even after first being bitten, Jack decides to give him a 2-day head start before they hunt him and Katrina down, and Montoya gives him a hug goodbye. The film ends with Jack and Guiteau heading back into the nest to finish their work. I have mixed feelings on this movie. In terms of plot, it's engaging and has a good mix of action and dialogue. I do have a few questions about the greater universe though. The vampiric incidents seem to be thought of as man-made, Valak's attack against the motel being classed as some kind of mass murder on the news, the government calling the wiping out of the European slayers as an act of terrorism, and the deaths of Father Molina and Mrs. Fisher are considered to be anti-Catholic hate crime by the police. How many people are aware of vampires in this film exactly? Is it just the Catholic Church and the slayers that they train, or intelligence agencies as well, with only the public being left out of the loop? Maybe I'm just thinking too deeply into this, but I do wonder about it. I am a bit iffy on disregarding bits of vampire lore. The garlic thing is like, okay, whatever, because a lot of stories do that anyway, including ones that I like. Vampires dressing like aristocrats is also something I'm willing to forego, because while I do think it looks cool, it makes more sense for vampires to want to blend into the general population, even if they do choose to be emo.
I chime in with the haven't you people ever heard of?
However, a couple of things did kind of irk me. One was that they didn't sleep in coffins normally. It makes sense why the vampires in this specific setting would sleep underground since they were on the move a lot while being hunted, but they could at least sleep upside down or something. Valak also picks up a burning piece of wood to burn Jack and scare Guiteau into agreeing into finishing the ritual, and I thought vampires were supposed to be weak to that too. The other big thing was that, although I understand that it was important to the plot, vampires avoiding crucifixes is pretty integral to their lore in my opinion, especially as these slayers are being sponsored by the Catholic Church specifically. Maybe it could be that only the lesser vampires are affected by them, I don't know. The beginning is a little iffy in its strength, as while the display of cool vampire slaying instruments and showcase of Valak's powers early on to set up the power imbalance for the rest of the film is appreciated, the fact that we were introduced to a big group of slayers, only for them to be killed 20 minutes in, was a bit jarring. Do I think it spoils the film? No, I don't. The acting in this movie was pretty good overall. Jack Crow being the sort of zealous, smartass action hero that can be pretty entertaining on screen. All of the vampires' performances were at least decent. I mean, they just acted as your otherwise typical vampires. A lot of the punches were clearly fake, which I chuckled at, but other than that, there isn't really much I can comment on. As a general note, I just wish that Katrina got a more significant role other than just transforming into a vampire while being an informant in the background. She had some potential to be a more interesting and impactful character. Side note, since the last video was on a film that featured the eldest brother of the clan, I have to say that the Baldwins have some pretty strong genetics. Effects-wise, this movie was pretty impressive. The fire stunts were all great, and I could believe that the vampires were all really burning in the sunlight. The editing was pretty standard, although a lot of the cuts between shots that signify the connection between Valak and Katrina were marked with a fade to red that really caught me off guard at first. It was certainly a memorable choice, but I don't think it's a bad nor good one. Before going into this movie for my review, I looked up a lot of the reviews to refresh my memory and get more of an idea for what I was in for. I was kind of surprised to discover how mixed they are, and after making this video, I still am. Roger Ebert wrote a review of this film when it came out, and I urge you to read it yourself as a couple of the lines made me burst out laughing, like, John Carpenter's Vampires gets its imprimatur from the Hollywood Catholic Church, a branch that broke off about the time the priest climbed the stairs to Linda Blair's bedroom in The Exorcist. While he does write that the film has a certain mordant humour and some macho dialogue that's funny, he does say that it's not scary, and the plot is just one gory showdown after another. He gave the film 2 stars out of 5. Gene Siskel did give the film a more positive review when it was discussed in an episode of At the Movies, however.
John Carpenter's Vampires are rousing entertainment. It is properly rated R for rough language and scenes of intense bloody violence and dismemberment. But I enjoyed it within that context and give it thumbs up.
In another review by the New York Times, Lawrence Van Gelder writes that the real miracle is how its cast was able to keep a collective straight face, and that the film's main conflict sounds like more of a problem for a labor union than a hired assassin.
She's got a point.
Vampires did receive a Saturn Award for Best Music, according to Wired, which makes sense given that it's John Carpenter and all, and the film's theme song is pretty banging. In more recent times, Vampires has an audience score of 47% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I don't think is deserved. I'd give it a 60 to 70%. The YouTube channel Joe Blow Horror Originals did make a video explaining why it's actually great, which I've linked in the description along with my other resources, and I do recommend. There were a couple of other direct-to-video sequels made of this film, neither of which Carpenter directed, and I don't plan on watching because they look like direct-to-video sequels. What more can I say? Overall, I really don't think that this film deserved all the criticism it got back in the day. It has its flaws and isn't the perfect vampire movie, but I think that it's a good watch and would recommend it to vampire fans who can get past it ignoring the folklore. Vampires has funny moments, great action, and a believably competent villain given the universe's laws, which is important for the story as it makes you want Jack to overcome his foe even more. if you like John Carpenter and or vampires, definitely check this movie out. Well, that's all for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.
The blue and green ones are my favorite kind, but I'll eat the colored ones from time to time, 'cause polos is life, 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 polos is life. Sleep all night